Thank you all for being here. We will get started in just a minute or so, but looking forward to the discussion. All right, welcome everyone to Distance Learning with Common Sense. My name is Merve Lapus. I'm the Vice President of Education Outreach for Common Sense Education. My guest today is going to be Mike Ribble, the Director of IT for Manhattan-Ogden Schools in Kansas. Today, we are going to be talking about the future of EdTech and digital citizenship in this now post-election world. The session is going to be recorded, so you can make sure that you can find this video and so many of our other videos right on our Common Sense YouTube page. You'll also find it right under the distance learning chat playlist. So let's get started. First off, Mike, welcome. And I would love if you can just kind of share with our audience a little bit about, well, one, who are you? Where do you work? And anything that you're most excited to kind of really address as we think about this kind of really important topic for schools and educators.
Oh, certainly, Merv. Thank you, and thank you for Common Sense for having me on this chat today. Just a little bit about myself. I've been around digital citizenship and around education my entire career. So these are exciting times for me because there's just so much that's going on, so many different pieces that are happening. I started working with ISTE about 15 years ago. Wrote a book called Digital Citizenship in Schools, kind of jumped off from there and worked with multiple people. And we're going to talk about some of the names as we go through this chat today. But, some great people, Dr. Jason Oler, Carl Hooker, all the folks at Common Sense. Merv, I think I've known you pretty much since you've been with Common Sense. So,
for the most part, yeah.
It's been a long time coming. So, we're a Midwestern Plains State school district, about 6,000 students. So not huge, but
Okay.
for a lot of districts, we're a pretty good sized district. I've been in this position for now 13 years. So I've kind of seen things come and go, and definitely have never seen anything like this. This whole COVID piece, which we're going to dive into a little bit, and what changed, and what are the possibilities and opportunities for IT. When I first came in, and started talking about IT and working with it in schools, it was back in the late 1990s, and it was like, this was all brand new kind of thing, and now, everybody's got a device, everybody's got, all this tech, all these kids are coming to our schools, and it's like, whoa, what are we supposed to do with all this stuff? I mean,
sure, it's kind of like when instruction was separate from the actual tools or the actual technology and instruction. They were operating separately, even though, more than anyone now, those communications and those meldings actually need to be a big part of working together.
And it's just gone exponential. It's just taken off so quickly. So,
yeah,
but we're going to hit on those things too. But I've been around education, started out off as a science teacher, assistant principal. So I've done those things, been there, seen a lot of things, but excited to be here. Ready to dive in anytime.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's dive in. So I know that digital citizenship, media literacy, it's a big part of the work you've been doing for the past couple of years. I mean, it's like one of the first people I heard ever talk about digital citizenship before I really dove into this work through our curriculum and the work that we do at Common Sense was first learning about you and the work that you did and the principles that you created. So why are these topics so important? Why is digital media, digital literacy, and digital citizenship, why are these topics so important for kids and for schools in general to you?
Well, it's really about, this synergy, like you were just talking about, how all of these things are melding in together, and the COVID and I think even post-COVID world, I think we're going to see that, technology has a synergistic piece to all of this curricular pieces. And I'm not saying that, the technology is taking the place of the curriculum, but they so interact with each other, and I'm very fortunate. I also teach a class for Kennesaw State, and so I have graduate students, and we're actually doing some of this work right now and talking about all the different tools and the resources and all of these things. And at some point I think that they're kind of blow their mind. It's just so much, but we also need to help our students to also see how this is a building block. And I see that with digital citizenship. Everybody kind of, for a long time, wanted to kind of put it in its own little box and set it over here and say, okay, let's talk about digital citizenship. And this last book that I did with Marty Park, Dr. Marty Park out of Kentucky, big shout out to him too, that we saw this as a building block, just like any other curricular area. So just like, English language arts, we talk about, nouns and verbs and all of those things, but you don't stop talking about those things. You build upon them and it becomes more complex. But if you go back to the building blocks, they're still there. So when we talk about safety and savvy and social, it's all part of this building process of getting students to this place of, how are we supposed to use this tech? And, I think we just kind of hand it off a lot of times and just say, well, you know what to do and just go do it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And,
sure.
And I think we want to be a little more proactive, a little more interactive, and of course, to get to the place of collaboration of using these. And I think that's what we wanted to see education be. I think that's what we wanted it to be all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I love that point. I think one of the things that's most important, and I'd like my colleague Jeff Knutson, shout out to him, as he's helped kind of create a lot of the content that we address with news and media literacy. It's not just about getting kids to fact check or understand where content's coming from, but that they know how to use it as an important skill to affect the world. That civic engagement, that opportunity to collaborate, like you said. I think that's so important. So as we think about right now, obviously you and I, we work in K-12 spaces, but we know that we're on the crux of this big week, right? It was an election week, but leading up to it, that news and media literacy and social media played a big role in leading up to today. And we're going to get to what happens now from this point on, right? But as we look at the effect of media literacy leading up to this current election, and again, even before the election, news and media literacy is kind of an area topic we focus on. How do you think it really kind of impacted the narrative? Or at least the experience for folks that have been following, this big news that's happening right now, or this big moment that's happening.
Well,
right now.
I think that they, have become more involved in this. I mean, it's now, with, when we had newspapers and when we had, television, it was all kind of a push kind of thing. And now we're really starting to see more of this interactive, political piece, and the piece that we have to be careful of is, where is all this information coming from? And so we do have to be critical. We have to look at it, but people are, opening up, and some of those discussions are hard. And I think that we're finding as people that when we get disconnected as far as physically, we also get a little disconnected also socially. And how do we reconnect and still say, okay, even though I'm going to post something, I still recognize you as part of this society, as part of this community. And, I may not agree with you. I may not agree
Yeah.
with what you're saying, but we can both be in the same space together. And I think that's what we have to show our kids is we need them to be able to see that this is a space that they can be active and share what they believe. But then at the end of the day, we can also step back and say, I still see you as an equal, as part of this community, as, as a part of a society, whether it's physical or digital. And,
Yeah.
some people want to try to separate these things, and it's not. We've meshed these pieces together that, the digital device that we have in our hands is that communication. It's that connection to so many people. And
Yeah.
I'm starting to see that, we're starting to back down from, just grabbing people to grab people as friends or, links or connections, but really trying to delve into and say, why am I connected to you? What's
Yeah.
that importance? How can you help me? But how can I also provide resources and information for you as well?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things we were talking about is, it's like these are important skills that we should all be comfortable with and all should be in practice with, because technology and the way that media and resources are coming to us and readily accessible, it's becoming, more and more accessible. That's something we're going to talk a little bit about later. Just there's actually an inaccessibility for a number of communities, but
Exactly.
Knowing that, this is something that we are gaining access to, and that it's important to know how we use it, how we leverage it, but then also know how it's potentially using us. I think one of the things we talked about was there was a documentary on Netflix that you watched called The Social Dilemma, and it kind of like not necessarily opened your eyes, but it reaffirmed a lot of things that you talked about. Or can you give me a sense of kind of like what were some of the big takeaways just with how that is affecting where we're at now, could still continue affecting in the future?
Oh, most definitely. I just think that it was a great piece, that just kind of it explained, what was happening. And it wasn't people that are on the outside. It were people from the inside that came out and said, okay, we were doing these things. We were manipulating. We were pushing. We were sharing these things with other people. And, it's like, reaffirming that we knew that was happening to us. But I think it's passing that along to other generations. I was talking to a nephew of mine who's in high school, and I think it really opened his eyes to, oh, this is really happening. This is how the things occur when we are on, digital, devices. And, it talked about, if you're not paying for a thing, then you're the product. Well, that's not really a new topic. It's really not a new idea conceptually, because if you look at that quote, it actually goes back into 1972. I had to go back and look and find it. And it was talking about television, and it was talking about, broadcast television, that it was things that were being pushed out, for, the masses, and we were, being sucked into that. How many people can, from my generation, maybe your generation, can still hum, commercial tunes, that from our childhood. Those were the things that we were being pulled out of. So that's that makes that piece so hard, is that it's we are being manipulated constantly by what's being out there. But now it's almost like it's coming at us from different directions now. It's not just broadcast television, but it's other people that are out on the web and other ways that that it can come at us. And so we just have to be good consumers. And I hate to distill it down to that, but we have to know that perhaps not everything that's out there is real. And
Well,
how do we define that? How do we decide what's real and what's not?
yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting, and the reality is, I mean, these are things that you and I could probably talk about for hours and days on end. But this is a shorter, broadcast opportunity. But what I wanted to be able to think is, as we think about, so we're still figuring out who the next president's going to be. There's all this voting to be done. We want democracy to go the direction it goes. But regardless of who's going to be leading education in K-12 space for the U.S. and being like a figurehead to look at how do we do education moving forward. What are the big issues in education and technology and schools in general that this administration really has to look critically at based on where our schools are and what they need, especially through this, context around technology and the way in which technology plays a role in the way that we learn, react, socialize? Like, what are the big things we need to really put a microscope on?
Well, I think, media literacy, we kind of touched upon at the beginning. I think we have to understand the tools that we have and the resources, but also know that we're not being run by them. We are, in charge of what we do and, what we put out there, and we have to make those decisions. So, being literate about, what's out there, what's being said, like I said, being able to be good consumers, being able to understand what is the information. But like I said, these are not new ideas. You look at H.G. Wells and War of the Worlds, with his broadcast from Halloween back in the 30s. People were driven crazy because they thought that the Martians were attacking, and it was a radio broadcast. And so it's those kinds of things that we have to be able to step back and be able to do that. So I think media literacy is one. Access to the technology, access to the data piece of it, I think is critical. And I think that's, one thing in K-12 especially that we struggle with mightily. And it's all pockets of the country, depending on, we've got some places that are doing astonishing things. They are, making connections, making sure that people have the resources, have the tools. And then other places, they're struggling at it. I talked to somebody from New Mexico, especially on the reservations down there, and they have almost zero data and internet connectivity that's down there. And so, if we are a society, if we believe that we are a country that wants to work together, we have to provide these resources and opportunities for everyone, not just for those that have opportunities, but really for the masses. And how do we get that? And a lot of organizations are working towards it. I don't want to mention one because I'll miss too many. But it's one of those things where it be something that our communities, our states, our country, that it becomes a responsibility, just like clean running water, electricity, and sewerage, and all of those things. Should this be that fifth utility, that comes into it? And that, a lot of articles, a lot of discussion about that piece too. So it's, those are probably for the next, 4 years for sure, are definitely areas. And then, like I said, post-COVID, what are we going to do with all these resources and tools that we've started to use? And what is that going to look like afterwards? Are we going to just shelve them?
Professional development for educators to be able to really kind of leverage. I mean, because like with COVID and just the new administration, that there's a lot to have to take on here. So equity and access is huge. Addressing that media and technology and media literacy is an active part of the way we live and learn now. But then there is the making sure that we feel that we have the capacity as educators to address the shifting dynamic of instruction, right? The pedagogy around delivering a lesson in class with my kids changes when you have to do everything now online, but even more so when you've got either hybrid or high flex type experiences where you've got kids online and in front of you at the same time, or you're switching now from in person to now having to switch to offline. Do you feel like there's enough professional development being provided out there, or is that also an area that we need to expect?
I think it's part of that media literacy piece. I think it's part and parcel, because our educators need to be ready and prepared to get to that place, because if they are not prepared, our students aren't going to be prepared. So it's just critical. So that's also a piece that will also be in teacher preparation and all of those things we have to look at. But I just want to make one quick point is, I think we've kind of crested a hill that we didn't think we could get over. We didn't think that we could, as a society, go and be online and do all of these things. And now that we've done it, it's kind of like, whoa, what were we afraid of? What were we missing before? And now we've done it. And how do we sustain that and help educationally to move us forward? Because I truly believe that, not to get rid of teachers, but to better utilize their tools, their resources in the classroom, and leave the mundane pieces for the tech tools and those things, but having teachers really help students to shine and to become, what do you want to be, and
Sure.
How do we get that to that place and open up their minds, as opposed to this rote sort of mentality of education, which not for everybody, but it's definitely a change. It's an opportunity.
Well, I think you bring something up, not for everyone, because there is also just a challenge of getting comfortable in that space. I believe we have a question from one of the folks that joined us that kind of talks a little bit about some of their concerns or questions on what this means to them. So this is from Dibakar. I'm sorry if I have said your name incorrectly. But the question is, there are so many negative news in newspapers or daily TV news. Can it harm our thoughts in some kind of subconscious layer? How can I enhance my knowledge with using these types of items? So whether for their own personal use, or even for as you bring these types of resources or stories into your instruction, right? Is this potentially doing something in the subconsciously? What would you say to this question?
Well, I agree 100%. I think that I think our students are they're internalizing a lot of this stuff, and it's not just newspapers and TV, but I mean online. I mean, think of all of the bombardment that they're getting, whether it's on Instagram or Snapchat or and all of that. That they're it could be the negative news, but it's also all the negative things that other people are passing along. And being a teenager is hard. It's a hard time. And we have to, as educators, say, here are some resources, here are some things to look beyond just what are all the negatives. Because to be real honest, we have one of the best countries in the world, and we need to be raising up all these people that are doing these great things. And that's where I think students and educators can help to put a light
elevate
on
the
that.
good. Sure.
Yeah. And not to say that we don't realize that there are issues, because there are. But we need to understand that. But how do we move that? And how do we become, how do we transform ourselves as a society? And I think that tech allows a lot of that, and I know we're running out of time, but one of the things that was exciting for me, I don't know if people remember the issues that they had in Egypt several years ago with the Muslims, Muslim Brotherhood, and all of that. But I was actually getting people contacting me at that time from Cairo saying, how can we be good digital citizens while all of this is going on?
It's all happening
during this Arab Spring piece, because they were using the technology to communicate and to work together and to find ways to help the society as a whole to heal. And that's what they were trying to do. And it's hard when you're a distance of those things, but we have to support them as well and be able to provide as much resources as we can.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring us some really interesting points there. And just one, like understanding how the resources, the media, or whatever you're watching, where does it slant? So that's part of the media literacy.
Mhm.
Does it have a slant? And if so, how do you find the opposite to give yourself kind of more rounded, perspective so you can make more educated decisions? The other being, how does it work, right? Because in many cases, like you've got algorithms, you've got certain things that lead you in a certain direction, which might keep your thinking there. And the more you see it, the more you start to feel those types of things. So how are you allowing, or how are you recognizing what dark patterns exist so that you can get it to work for you and not have it just working you the entire time? But I think there's also a lot around just kind of leadership and community. So one of the things you wrote in your book, the Digital Citizenship Handbook for Leadership, what are some important things that school administration or school leaders should be thinking about as we bring these kind of bigger, meatier, topics back into our schools? We've got more technology, or we're trying to get more access to technology to our kids or our entire school community. But we've also know that we're getting heavy exposure now to different resources, tools, and even messages. What are some big things that leadership should be thinking about as they take this back?
Well, and that's something that, again, a lot of them haven't been trained in, and that's what they need to learn about, how do I use these resources? So, on a basic level, there's communication. Am I sending out tweets? Am I sending out Instagram? Am I sending out, how am I communicating with my people, and how do we use that? And then how am I using the tools as I walk around and I interact with students? If we're a Chromebook, school, am I on my Chromebook and showing, things that, can be done, and opportunities for both the students and for the staff of what they can and can't, what they should be doing inside the classroom. And then also providing, these resources. And, I have to give a shout out to Common Sense. I mean, you guys you've provided, all of these resources out there that, can be placed into the classroom, and they can, utilize it right away, and they can integrate that right into, what they're doing. And, bringing those and making that path as smooth as possible is critical for a leader inside of a school, because the more roadblocks that you put in front of it, the harder every one of those things become. And opening up to parents, and just letting them know, these are the things that we're doing in our school. These are how we're using these tech tools. And then also, when are we putting them away? When are we setting them aside? That we're balancing these two, that we're not just trying to create a society of, just drones that are sitting in front of screens, but how they're taking that and utilizing the cameras and the microphones and all of the other resources, that they're showing how they're learning in a different mode. Not everybody loves to write a 3-page paper on Moby Dick, and
what are you talking about?
it was my favorite. It was my favorite assignment. What can I say? But but being able to show that in so many different ways, and there's so many resources that are out there that we can pull in and be able to say, I understand this, and I understand the deeper meaning because I've pulled these layers back, and that's what technology's done.
All right. Well, so we are at time, and we could be talking about this stuff forever, but and this is just a dent for everyone that's tuned in or will be tuning in. This is just a dent in the conversation. But to get folks started, what would you say are your top takeaways for anyone who's listening now or anyone who will listen later? What are the top takeaways that you would want them to have when it comes to addressing media literacy or technology kind of moving forward now?
Well, like I said, media literacy's got to be up on the top. And big shout out to a new colleague of mine, Renee Hobbs, out in Rhode Island. She just did a co-keynote with me. So she has got a lot of resources. Jason Oler, of course, Common Sense Media. Carl Hooker, all of those are great resources for those different pieces. Number two has got to be access. We talk a lot about that in this current book, like you mentioned. We talk a lot about how do we begin to expand this idea into the communities, into, different places, and how do we start pulling these? So, maybe it needs to be a community effort to actually bring, digital access into our space. And then finally, leadership and educational specifically, but leadership in multiple different levels, that within our cities and our counties and our states and our country, that they are leading us to utilize what we have, and not just say, okay, now we're past COVID, now we're going to back off and we're going to go back to the way it was. I think that that's a wrong move. I think that we should move forward with it and really find its place inside of education, and that takes a lot of leadership, and that's those are things that that is going to take time and a lot of conversations, a lot of interactions, but those are the places. And I think we missed a bunch of questions too, Merve. I think they kept posting questions, but there's just so much.
Yeah.
We're like I said, we'll have to have our morning show, and we'll do Merve and Mike in the morning, and we'll just do this every single day.
There you go. Yeah. I look forward to that. We can discuss that further. So for those of you that joined us, and for those of you that did leave questions, we'll make sure that we've got direct resources and links added to the comments section. We will be putting a connection to some resource slides that Mike helped to put together, just for you to be able to take more away from the discussion outside of the rich conversation we had today. Plenty of links to jump into, curriculum that can help you solve these things, implementation, models and guides, and then other resources, so that you can really just kind of learn about how you bring these things into your own classroom and into your own space, your own lives. Again, that for those of you that did join, also, we've got a certificate form if you want to be able to receive a certificate for attending. That link is available in the chat, and we'll also we'll put that again here. And then lastly, we are recording this live, so this will be available on the Common Sense channel. You can just look for the playlist around distance learning with Common Sense, and learn, view, share, watch, all that good stuff. Mike, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining us today. You guys have a great weekend.
Thank you.